And so much devices, so much methods of hunting were invented. And so in place, they used to use a lot of stone tools like spears, right, for hunting, right? And so they did make a lot of developments on the tools like microblades and stuff like that. But now you don't really have to worry about the tools. They got this bow and arrow, excellent system. So they don't have to make arrowheads so beautifully. So, spending a lot of time making beautiful arrowheads. It's okay if it just stubs the animal skin. And otherwise, you would use trap beds and other all kinds of traps and stuff. So you don't really have to worry about the stone tools. And they would make something like this. This is a beautiful arrowhead, but you know, we are not always finding these beautiful ones. There are so many crude ones, crudely made ones in German time, and that clearly indicates that they were not really concerned about the stone tools anymore. They don't have to. So that's how it goes with the technology. You try to develop the technology for efficiency, better efficiency, and more effect, more power, and etc. But once you don't need it, you just throw it away. Like nowadays, everybody has personal computer and smartphone and everything. But we used, well, a couple decades ago, nobody had it. Almost only specialists have this computer, and computers were so huge and everything. But one striking invention was a word processor, word processor, and we don't see it anymore. It's disappeared. And but it was a great invention. We could type things, type sentences with that, and also we could print it right there with the same in the same machine, and we loved it. I used it for many years, but until we got the computer. You see, that was striking and became very popular, and everybody used that. But it just went, just disappeared all too soon. That's how it goes, the technology, you see. And the same story in the German time too. Something develops, something decay and disappear, go extinct. All right, and they could use animal resources, not only eating meat, of course. I think I explained that in the Paleolithic period. But the skin, fur, hide, I would say, and fat, blood, flesh, meat, and intestine, intestine, very good source of protein. And as a material, tool material, or bones and fangs and antlers, horns, and tendons for tying, this kind of material. So they couldn't waste any of these. And one of the reasons I told you why they had to capture the animal alive is to full use those material from the animal. And you don't want to make holes in your fur, beautiful fur. You don't want to stab the hole in the fur body. So, and let's go into the plant resources. This is more important thing in German time because they never had that in the previous period, the Paleolithic period, they didn't have enough botanical food resources. But now you got so much broad leaves trees, koyoji, came in with fruits and nuts that you can eat. So naturally, they went for it, and they shifted their diet from meat eating to plant and meat eating. And the major thing is the hard shell type thing, kenkarui というんですけど、brought some examples. Show it now. A lot of these. Okay, let's see. You know what this is. Chestnuts. Kuri desu ne, chestnuts. The Japanese native chestnuts of the small grain, just like this. It's very tiny ones. But as I mentioned before, they really loved chestnuts. And so they tried to increase the amount of the crop. So they grew chestnut tree. They formed chestnut forest, obviously. Not from the DNA data, but from pollen data, we can tell that the pollen of the chestnuts increased rapidly from Jomon period in certain area. And they also did innovation of species too. They weren't satisfied with this size, so gradually they grew it bigger. They made it bigger species and bigger. This is what we get today. This is the normal size we eat today, but they had it. They had this size already in Jomon time, in later Jomon time. So that obviously shows the chestnuts were really of the main interest. And walnuts, you see, walnuts. This is different from what you see in the market today. What we use is a round type. This is oval type, smaller walnuts. This is a Japanese native species called onigurumi ですね。onigurumi. I don't know why it's called oni, but this shell is very, very hard compared to the Western type of modern type of walnuts. You can't break it, actually. You really have to hit it hard with a stone, but still you can't break it. But once you soak it in water and moist it to some extent, and then heat it on the pan or something, then it will crack right at the center. So and obviously they knew that technology too. And there are so much. Oh, this is different. This looks like a chestnut. Looks really like a chestnut. So wrinkle chestnut type. But this is totally different thing. This is tochi. Horse chestnuts. That's the English term, I think. Horse chestnuts. And tochi no mi desu ne. Tochi. And this is tastes different. Totally, it's a different thing from chestnuts, and tastes different. And it includes a lot of tannin. It has a lot of harshness. You have to remove. You can't eat it like this. And you peel it, you boil it, peel it, and mill it into powder. Make it powder. Then soak it in water, fresh water, running water for what, a week or two. Long time. And then you can eat it. You can make mochi out of it. or something like that. So they didn't use this type of nuts until quite late, like until middle Jomon period. It wasn't popular, but from late and latest Jomon period, it became popular. And that was the time they were complaining about the short of food, so they had to eat this. But actually, it should taste good when all the process are done. By the way, this is a shell outside. It's inside this shell. And acorns, donguri, acorns. There are so many types of acorns, but sometimes it has a harshness. You have to remove harshness. Akunuki o shinai to ikenai. And except for these are different type of acorns. Sudaji, shi type ですね。shi ってなんていうのかな。There are all acorns in English, but there are shi type, kashi type, and kunugi type. And many types include those tannin and those bad things, except this shi type. This is a mateba shi. Mateba shi, one of the largest acorns we can get. And still around. We got some on campus too. And this one too. This is a tiny shi nuts. It's very tiny, but sudaji. And these could be eaten. And these are edible without processing. And they taste good, actually. And this one, especially when it's fresh. And when you heat it a little bit, it's sweet. It's almost like chestnuts. It's sweet. So I'm sure they love these. And sudaji, it's not as sweet, but they still have some sweetness and tiny and chewy. Good. Nuts to eat without harshness. And this is different. This is one of the conifer. It's a rare case. It's one of the conifer type, not the broadleaf. This is kaya. Kaya はね、なんつったかな。I forgot the name in English. I'm sorry. I should think. Well, we can look in the dictionary too. Kaya って言いますね。And this has a slight tannin and bitter taste. So you should remove it by boiling. But this is kind of oily and very crispy and very good. And it has a very strong scent of particular to the conifers. Very good scent. 爽やかな香りがね、する。And these are all edible, whether you should process it or not. And these are only part of their botanical diet. And let me give them away. Oh, we talked about this war too. And so naturally, they had to develop another new type of stone tool like these, mortar and grinder. This is mortar. 石臼。日本語では石皿という、石の皿って書くんですが、皿ではなくて、臼ですね。mortar and grinder to mill the nuts down. Well, this is not the way they use. This is a raw one. I mean, you have to remove the shell first and boil it and remove the harshness first, then mill it. And this is kaya that I just showed you. This is sudaji. This is kunugi, round type of acorns, which has very, very strong harshness. You can't eat it right there, raw. And walnuts, stuff like that. And those powdered nuts would made into this kind of cookie type of things. We call it Jomon cookie, actually. No other way to call them, but these are charred one. It remained in the soil because it was charred, even though they're organic. And we have no way of analyzing it so that we could tell the ingredients, but obviously they were the cookie type of shape of things that they made from the powders. And probably many things were mixed, like animal fat or blood or whatever. And even like if you mix something like a honey, bee honey, it will be really a cookie, desserts. And these another types of cookies with decoration patterns, just like Jomon pottery. They were so good at handling clay to make pottery, so they made some designs of their food too. These are all charred ones. Maybe burnt in the fireplace by accident. And also, there are so many other type of botanical food resources, like tubers はね、根茎ですね。芋とかですね。Like a taro type of, it's not potato, but we call them potato. Taro, yam, 山芋ですね。And other type of roots, like lily root, the flower lily, ユリですね。ユリね。The roots of a lily is so good when you hear it. It's なんていうかね、美味しいですね。It's very delicious. We still eat them, It's a specialty. And fruits. Of course, some of the native fruits we had in Japan, like wild grape. Just a minute. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. A wild grape and what? I really don't know the English term for it, but it's a kind of kiwi, the kiwi fruits that we eat today. The native kiwi was a very tiny one. It's less than an inch. It's like a half inch or something like that. They're tiny kiwi. It looks like kiwi, of course. And that was native. And anything else? There's another type called akebi. I think I showed you a picture of akebi. And well, not very many kinds, but there are some fruits that they could eat. And niwatoko to ka desu ne. Niwatoko is a red berry type of, tiny berry type of fruits. And so on. And also, those were natural things, native species, so they could get it natural, or you could raise them, of course, too. But they went forward and they started this horticulture, so-called horticulture, 栽培ですね, not agriculture. The difference between agriculture and horticulture is the size and scale and system. The agriculture has to be big, large, vast land and a lot of crops and all systematic, all planned out. And everybody of the community has to take part in. And that kind of thing, that's agriculture. But the horticulture is very small size type of raising plants. just like you raise your vegetables in your garden, you know, that size. So probably that was a case in Jomon time, and they started that. And this is what you see here is a gourd in Perilla. Gourdはひょうたんですね。we find a lot of gourd seeds from the Jomon sites and perilla seeds too. Perilla is a kind, very, looks like a shiso, if you know what that is in Japanese. Shiso, but it's different from shiso. It doesn't taste or smell like shiso. It's different. And you can eat the leaves and you can extract oil from the seeds. Perilla seeds. エゴマですね。エゴマ油。エゴマですね。And these type of species are very hard to find in wilderness. You know, they don't grow well in the wild. I mean, their leaves are so good, and bugs always, or worms eat them up. So you really have to take care of them if you want to grow. So these were one of the species taken care of by Jomon people. Obviously, we're finding a lot of seeds. And nowadays, we're finding more stuffs like beans, like a soya beans, a group of soya beans, smaller ones, but green beans, you know, and azuki, tiny beans, brown tiny beans that we eat today. You know, the anko, the sweet ones, that's made of the azuki. The same close species were already grown by Jomon people in certain quantity. And so we now learn that they were going so positive about developing and exploiting those resources and trying to raise them themselves in smaller scale, you know. And they used to talk about this agriculture in Jomon period. Now we know that they didn't go into the real agriculture. Well, you know, they were still hunter and gatherers, and they didn't go into agriculture. But they used to talk a lot about the agriculture in Jomon period, because some of the stone tools and other stuffs look like agricultural tool that we use today. So, you know, and many people were concerned about it, but in academy, we don't admit that. You know, this is not enough to call agriculture. It's horticulture. Okay, and how about fish? Marine and you know, water resources. And there's so many type of fish and seaweeds. We don't have evidence of the seaweeds itself from the Jomon sites, but we're pretty sure that they used all kinds of resources of the ocean too. And fish hooks were developed quite early in Jomon time. These are not the marine one. These were found from the caves in mountain area in middle part of Japan. And so obviously these were river fishing type of fish hook. They're small and they're simple. I don't know how they attach that to the cord or string, but you know, they're finely made. And there are some other bone fragments, which obviously shows the process of making the hooks, you see. So, and these are one of the earliest fish hooks ever existed in the world. Well, maybe we don't know the other part, you know. So the excavation and investigations has been developed so much in Japan, so we are finding it, the early ones. faster maybe, but still. And I think I mentioned about the transgression, 両門改心ですね. The ocean goes into the inland because of the rise of the temperature and the rise of the sea level. And as I told you, the peak of the high temperature has already passed around 6,000 to 7,000 years ago. So at the time, the ocean level was higher than today. And that means the ocean went into the lowlands and, this Kanto plain is a very gentle slope area. So the water goes really deep into the inland, and these triangles showing the area of the coastline, because these are the shell mound sites that they discovered. So if you connect those sites, you will be able to tell the coastline of at the time. And Boso Peninsula, Chiba Prefecture was almost like one big island. See, and the gentle slope would form a very fine grained sand as the water goes in, and minerals, stones just comes down from the mountain area, broke down into smaller grains, so it becomes a sand. And also the waves would break the minerals to smaller grain too. So you form a sand area, sand dune, sand beach, and sand based ocean, these areas. And that kind of environment is ideal for shellfish to grow. 貝がね、住みやすいということですね。That's why they formed so much shell mounds. They used so much shell as well as fish. And this is one example of the Fukui Prefecture. This is the Japan seaside, but you see the rows and layers of the shell accumulated upon. So that tells you how much they use the shell fish for their diet. And they could eat it raw if it was fresh, but they could heat it, they could boil it. I mean, to just extract the meat out of the shell, you have to boil it maybe. And also, if you boil it well and dry it, it will be a preservable food. 保存食になりますね。干し貝、dried shellfish. 干し貝って言いますけどね。You can preserve that for a certain time. So it's pretty useful too, as well as fish. You can dry the fish too. Okay, and let's see. Weights. The simple stones, just water-worn, round, flat type of stones that has a notch on both sides. Notch on both sides. So that you can tie them to the string. And they could be in many functions. You can use a weight for many things, of course. But the major things we are supposing is these are sinker of the net sinker. You tie those weights at the bottom of the net. So the net would stand straight in the water. Nets were made with botanical fibers at the time. And those botanical fibers are not very stable in the water. It floats and moves around. But if you put those weights at the bottom, it will just stand straight. and would be able to catch fish and other marine animal. You see? And there are other type of weights made of not the stones, but the pottery fragment. You know, pottery are easy to break. I mean, if you're using it for years, you know, it would break in pieces, it would be broken in pieces. And those fragments would be shaped into something like this, oval or square or whatever, and then make notch on both sides and use it as a weight, because pottery is made of clay, and clay is a mineral, so they have certain weight, not as heavy as stone maybe, but it's pretty heavy too. So they could be recycled. Broken potteries could be recycled as weights. And so they would do the fish hook fishing, and spear fishing, and net fishing, and all kinds of fishing devices that we still use today. And harpoons, these are kind of large fish hooks. By the way, you see, these are not sharp. The point of the fish hooks are not sharp. These and these and these. This is kind of sharp, but not enough to stab through the fish mouth, right? And how could they fish with this kind of tool? And everybody would misunderstand that a fish hook has to stab through the mouth of the fish. But actually, mouth fish has a very specific construction, and it's made of several bones. Kind of complicated system, and it opens wide and closes, and has a certain bones, and between bones, it's almost like skin, very thin. It doesn't have much meat. As you eat fish with a head, please observe next time around the mouth, and you have almost spaces between those mouth bones. So it's not stabbing tools. The fish hooks at the German time was not the stabbing tools, but hooking tools. Really, fish hooks, hooking tool. 引っ掛けるだけね。It would go through between those bones and hook them. And bones, mouth bones are very strong, so you can't. I mean, fish won't be released. They can't escape once you hook it. So this is a different system from today's fish hooks, iron metal fish hooks. But they knew all about those system of the fish body, fish mouth. And these are harpoons, and so many types. These are the types attached to the stick, the stem. But you notice that these are not straight. This is kind of curved. This is curved, you know. These are not really straight, this one too. And the reason why is this is not the single type of harpoon. I shall explain that too. These are the specific type. Okay, I'm kind of exaggerating it, but it's like this. And you notice the parts sticking out, you know. And these are multiple type. You hire another one on the other side. Like this. And tie them together. Maybe 2 or 3, you can hire 3 of those, you know. And if you use this one, you would not stab the fish, but you would pinch the fish. in between, you know. So it's easier than stabbing straight through the fish. You know, just aim at the fish and just, you know, stroke it, and fish will be fitting in this area, so you can catch them easily. And that's the system. Oops. These, you see this bottom part is sticking out, and notches for tying, you know, sticking out. You see, and of course they had this single type, straight single types too, and got bobs, この返しっていうかな, bobs. But some types wouldn't have the bob. Oh, I will show you another type. There are a very simple type. Something like that. You know, there's no point. It's a little curved, straight, but a little curved one. You know, these would not be able to use if you just stop them. Will just go out, come out if you pull. But that's not the case. It's been used like this. The stems were tied like this. So this other end would work as a verb. So if you stab it deep enough, the fish would stay. You know? So they developed so many types of the harpoons. And these with a fat bottom, these, and these, all of these are the type has a socket underneath, the hole underneath, 穴が開いてるね, hole, so that you can stick the stem into it. And that means it's a release type. It doesn't stay on the stem handle. You put it on the handle, on the end of the handle, and stub it. And when you pull the handle, it will be released and comes out of the handle and stay in the body of the fish. And you would notice there are, this is notch right here. This is not quite the notch, but the narrow part. This is a wider bottom. And another notch here, and slight notch right here, right? And right here, notches. For tying cord, tying strings. And you would hold the handle and string together and stop the fish and release. And your handle will come out, wood handle will come out of the harpoon, but you're still holding onto the string, so fish wouldn't be able to escape. Even if you pull the string, you can catch them. You see, the same type of harpoons. 離島盛りっていうんですけどね、頭が離れるとか、離島盛り、head release type ですね。And you might notice these, the arrowhead, stone arrowhead on top of the points of the harpoon, attached to the harpoon. There's a slit made into the point, and arrowheads, stone arrowheads were pinched in between. And you notice the darker color, black kind of stain right there on the, these, by the way, these are made of antler, deer horn. And those stains would reflect that they were using something like a tar for fixing the stone tools, arrowheads, to the point of the harpoon. Gluing, you know, they were using tar as a glue. And you might wonder that do you really need arrowheads to stab the fish? Fish are not the hard thing, you know, not like deers and boars. They don't have hard skin. So, and it would be good if you have a sharp point, but not as much as putting those arrowheads. But actually, these were not designed for fish. And these were only found from the Pacific side of the northern Japan, Tohoku area, and Hokkaido, North Island, Hokkaido, the coastal area of Hokkaido and Tohoku. And that's the area that they have the sea mammals, ocean mammals, 海生哺乳類ですね, such as seal and, well, you know, the seal group, アザラシとかオットセイとかね、海生哺乳類がいた. And these were designed for catching those sea mammals, animal, not the fish. That's why they had this sharp arrowhead installed to stab through the skin, hard skin of those mammals. All right. So they had a variety of tools designed for a variety of marine resources. Okay, and there are so many forms of fish hooks too. And for the larger fish, this is a composite type of fish hook. You make the stem and the point apart, in different pieces, and tie them together so that you can make a bigger fish hook for big fish. And they were utilizing how many, I just forgot, but 50, 60 species of marine resources, including shells. So all kinds of fish they were aiming at. And smaller ones, of course, but sometimes we're finding bones of the tuna, maguro, or bonito, katsuo, and that kind of large pelagic fish. Pelagic っていうのは回遊魚ですね. Pelagic fish that goes around the Pacific for their lifetime. And they were constantly fishing, swimming. They never stop. They would sleep while they're swimming, you know. It's a weird kind of creature, but they are a bigger fish with a lot of meat and tastes good too, as we know very well. We still eat them. We still love them, you know, to eat. And so sometimes you have to aim at those large type of fish, very active and powerful fish. So it's pretty dangerous too. And something like porgy. Porgy is a kind of snapper. Snapper はタイですね、タイ。これはマダイですね。Red porgy ですね。Found in the site in Aomori Prefecture, North Japan. And these bones, vertebrae, are so large, very big. If you reconstruct the size of the fish from these, he would be over a meter. Huge, huge porgy at the time in Jomon period. By specialists, they would grow like that, you know, if you leave them alone, you know, if you don't catch them when young and leave them as they grow, they would grow like over a meter. And that was the case. That was the situation in Jomon time. So they could eat huge fish. These are bottom type of fish. They don't come up to the shallow ocean. They would stay in the bottom area. So they had to prepare appropriate tools like a long cord, long string, and big hooks, and etc. But anyway, they did. And also in water work, they had to have this boat, canoe, dugout canoe. It's a simple, one of the simplest boat that they could ever make. So there are so many wooden canoes were found from the sites, waterlogged sites. 水漬けの遺跡でね, so they wouldn't decay out, they wouldn't disappear, or preserved well. You see, some of them has very delicate decoration type of projection at the bow. But it's all too simple. Have no attachments or anything, no sail, 帆はないですね. And only paddles were also found, you see. So it's a manpower boat. And also, as you can see, these are shallow ones. These are made of tree trunk. Yeah, tree, big tree, about 1 meter diameter, split in half and dig it up. So you would have this canoe. So naturally, you can't make a deep type of boat, you know. In later periods, they learned how to raise the side by attaching the boards, accumulating boards up there. So you would have a deep boat. But they didn't have that. They didn't know that at the time. They didn't have the technology either. So these simple dugout canoe, floats very well on the surface of the water. Very weak when the wave comes. It'll be easy to triple, you know. And so it wasn't stable type of vessel. 安定が悪いですね. So they would be paddling around the coastal area, very close to the land. But if you go out into the ocean, it will be very difficult to do anything because of the wave. So once you go out to the ocean, you get the big wave. So probably most of the time they would stick to the coastal area for fishing and other work and transportation, of course. They would travel around using this boat all around Japanese archipelago, along the coast. And if you're not too far from the coast, you will go really fast. It's faster than walking, and you wouldn't need much energy. You have to just paddle, but you don't have to walk. So, and of course, you can carry things on the boat. You can load it up with any kind of material. So it could be used for trades, not only for transportation of the human beings, but goods would be traded, using this kind of boat. Probably a lot of these were going back and forth at the time in Jomon period. And all right, so these are the boats, canoe, paddle. This handle design, there. It's kind of rotted away, but they were good woodworkers. They knew how to do those minute works too. And this is a reproduction picture of the tuna fishing. Tuna and bonito, they are the large fish, but they're not the deep water fish. They are always around the shallow area of the water because their main bait is like a sardine, iwashi toka ne, tiny fish swimming in herd, 群れをなしてね、泳いでる。And they were always aiming at those tiny fish that swims around just below the surface. So it's not too difficult to find them and hook them. Probably they use bait and fish hook here. And once they hook it and try to keep it near the surface and try to drag them near the boat, canoe, and stop them with a harpoon. It's a stringed harpoon, release type harpoon, right? So looks fun, but it's very, very dangerous because this dugout canoe is not stable. If you're fighting with this powerful big fish, you're easy to go into the water yourself, you know. So it's kind of life-risking work to aim at those pelagic fish, kaiyugyone. But still they did, not in quantity. From the shell mounds, we were finding a lot of bones of a variety of fish. And we were finding vertebrates of bonitos and tuna, but not in quantity. So it wasn't really popular fishing to catch them, but they did catch them. So that means they were risking lives to go out and get those, you know. Why? They have this animal resources on land, and they got plant resources, nuts and all kinds of food on the land, and marine resources from the coast or near the coast or shallow water. But sometimes they go out to the ocean and risked their lives for these fish. Why they have to do that? That's one of the mystery that you have to decipher. Probably they have this different value, not just food, not just energy resources, but probably they had something like a social value, you know, or maybe it's related to some kind of ceremony, ritual, or anything of that kind that they have to risk their lives. There's one type of ceremony, it's a passing ceremony that could be seen in various races and tribes all around the world. We still have that in our community today. Seijinshiki desu ne, passing ceremonies. Ne? And when you're a kid and you have to be grown into adult, and you have to go through this ceremony. And in many cases, these are dangerous ceremonies. You know? Sometimes you have to risk your life, like jumping the cliff or things like that. And probably this could be one of those passing ceremony. If you're a young guy, and if you want to be adult, you accompanied by a man, your parents or grown-ups, and go out and catch one tuna. Then you'll be admitted from the community as an adult or something like that. That's my imagination, of course. And that's possible. That could happen, of course. And there are similar cases in the world, other parts of the world. So we still don't know why, but they did. And they really, I'm sure they enjoyed eating those too. All right. And river or lake resources are also of their concern. If you're living inland, not from away from the coast, then there are some evidences that they did fishing in the river, and this is one of the fish trap that they found. And this is a reconstruction, but the base of those sticks were remaining in the water, you know, the old river. And this is stream. No, this is the other way around. This is a mistake. The arrow should be pointing this way, downward. The stream comes down, the water comes down from upward to down. And you may know that the river fish are always facing upstream. They're always swimming against the river flow. Do you know why? Well, of course, they're moving around, so they would face the other way around for a short time, but normally they're facing upstream. because they're trying to catch the bait. And in the case of a river, the bait comes floating from upstream. So you're looking at it. Yeah? So the fish, some of the fish would go in there and through the narrow straits right here and go into this pond-like area. And fish are the kind of species that's not very good at going back the narrow place. You know, they can't find this narrow straits again, so they will just swim around in there. So Jomon people would catch them. So this is one of the traps that means they knew very well. They knew very well of this nature of the river fish. You know, same story as other animal, rabbits and hawks and another type of trap. This is not Jomon. This is, I think, later ones, like a Yayoi period, but probably they had the same system. It's a basket type of trap. So one end is pointed, it's closed. This is open side. And of course, you put the pointed end upstream and downstream of the opening. And the fish would go in from the opening into the narrow part and wouldn't be able to go back. So you just set it and leave it for hours and come back and find the fish inside. You know? So it's called uke. They're still using this kind of traps today too. You know, many of those devices are still good today. So that means all kinds of marine resource catching devices were all already developed by Jomon people. And other, don't have the pictures, so I have to go right here. There's other type of river trap still in use today. This one's also. A series of wood or bamboo, whatever, slanted in the river. And upstream, going up, the fish would go up. And some would go fish. I mean, some would go swimming upstream this way, but some would go up this slope. And you're waiting right there and just catch them by hand. This is one of the most excellent ideas for fishing, river fishing. Yana と言いますね, in Japanese. Yana と言います. And they still use it today for salmons and trouts. So you might have seen it in countryside. All right. So that's in poison fishing. We don't have any evidence of poison fishing, but there's another strategy. Maybe some poisonous elements from the plants. You would extract it, you know, dilute it, and put in the water, like a river, upstream. Then it would dilute, further dilute, and spread in the river water and affect fish. And it's not the strong poison, you know, they would not kill them, but the fish would go faint, and float again, and somebody's waiting at the downstream and catch them by hand, you know, something like that. And this was quite popular until recent. I mean, like Meiji Taisho period, I think. So popular they would do that. So they can catch them so easily, and so you can catch every fish in the water. So I think it's prohibited by the government now. You can't do that anymore. You know, it's too effective. And I'm pretty sure they knew it about the poison fishing in Jomon time too. We don't have the evidence. All right. And so much about the resources, but let's have a break. It's 4:20 past. So let's start from the 4:35. Okay, right? Any questions so far? So much for the food resources and subsistence technologies and methods, you know. And now let me explain something about this process and preservation of the food. 保存ですね。処理と保存。All right. As I already showed you in different picture, but this is a mortar, 石皿ですね, mortar, 石臼 and grinders, and trying to mill the nuts in powder so that you can make it into various shape, various size of the cookie-like food to eat. And devices of the processing are quite simple, not very in variety. Simply milling or boiling in the pottery and soaking in water, fresh water or running water. And sometimes river is used for the specific facility of soaking or, you know, how do you call that? アク抜きをするときにね、水さらしっていうんですね。Breaching. It's not breaching, actually, bleaching, but close to bleaching with the water and extract the bad elements out. And also for preservation, you know, they need to preserve some food. Like nuts, you can only get them in autumn time, but if you can't preserve them, you want to eat them all the year through until the next year. So you have to prepare something like a storage pit. I think I've shown you this one too. No, maybe not. Yeah, I did. This is underground type pit. Of course, pit is over underground, but this is a big pit, like over 1 meter diameter. Entrance is very narrow. You fill it up with chestnuts, I mean acorns. And this case was in southern part of Kyushu, southern island. And this storage pit was installed by the river, very close to the river. So the water comes into the soil till this level. So this underneath, this lower part is soaked in water, always soaked in water. So, but just by storing it in the pit, you can also extract the harshness from the acorns. You know, so it's a double function pit. And you just close them up, the entrance, for a certain time, and until you really need to eat up the stock, and later on you would open up and keep eating the rest. And there must be a lot of other type of storage pit. We'll find a lot of pits from the Jomon sites. And you can keep things in the pottery too for a short time. Wait a minute. It's going too far. And shelves, you can put them in shelves in the house, in the pet dwelling. You can, I'm sure they did make shelves on your head. And you can store like dried meat, dried fish, and other food. And as you build fire at the center of the dwelling, the smoke will just hit directly the shelves. So the food up there will be naturally smoked. And smoking is other device of preservation. You know, you can preserve it so long if once you smoke it. So I'm sure, well, there's no evidence about smoking. Nobody can prove it, you know, in Jomon time, but I'm pretty sure they knew about all the smoking methods. And drying, smoking, and salting. In some part, in some certain periods, not all the way, but there are some evidences that they were making salt along the coastal area on the shore. And they made a specific type of pottery just designed for salt making. It's a boiling pot. But didn't last for a long time. Maybe they didn't really need that much of salt, because you can get salt from the dried fish, dried whatever, the seaweed, you know, can be used as trade goods. And also, if you are getting blood from animal, you also eating salt from the blood too. And could be mixed with other ingredients for preservative food. So you don't really need salt, you know. So that's why they didn't last for a long time. We're not too sure, but and it's a lot of work to make salt. You know, you have to boil the seawater for a long time. And now, okay, so much about the food. Now we are going into the one of the highlight of the German culture. That's pottery. You really have to talk about the pottery when you talk about German. And because there are so many pottery culture all over the world in the prehistoric time and even after. But German pottery is outstanding of all because they lasted for a long time. It's over 10,000, 12, 13,000 years. And they had so much change. They showed so much transition in shape and design, size, and all the variety of the decoration is immense, incredibly rich. And none of other pottery culture would show that, you know. And I'm going to demonstrate many of those now. And this is chronology. The chronology of German pottery is already almost established. We are now working into the sub-classification, the smaller chronology in between these and these and these. You know? This is a basic chronology. It's a very simple one. And the upper part is the earliest type of pottery. Very simple, rounded bottom or pointed bottom. And it's the earliest German into earliest German, still round or pointed bottom. And from the early German, Zenki, they firstly show the flat bottom, but very, very small. And the rim is straight and decoration is very simple, very flat decoration. But from early German, the wavy rim appears and the decoration becomes more complicated, still flat, rather flat, but very complicated design. And Middle German is the highlight of German pottery culture. And it shows a variety of shape and so much decoration and so much parts sticking out, you know, three-dimensional decoration. And these are not really, but I'll show you many examples that you would surprise. I surprise even today. You know, their decorative sense incredible. But the latter half of the Middle German, it becomes simple again. It's flat. and not very three-dimensional. And late Jomon, simple all the way through latest Jomon. And there are some variety like a spouted vessel, small ones, and other some types are very hard to tell about the function, but a variety shows in the latest Jomon and late Jomon too. So anyway, we don't really know the reason why they got this variety of decoration and shape, and the reason why this type of turns into simpler type in middle Jomon. We can't decipher the reason for the transition of those designs. It's very difficult. But there could be some theories that I may show you later. And they are, wait a minute, they are basically a cooking pot. They're a daily use material, except for this one. This is not the daily use. They're not drinking tea or other liquid stuff. This is designed for ceremonial use, probably, but those, what we call deep pot, deep pot, cooking pots. Whatever the design is, whatever the shape is, the deep pots are all cooking pots, basically. And the cooking pots should be something like these, They're very simple things. You don't need any design, any decoration, any parts sticking out. It's not functional. It's not for nothing, for use, daily use. But they added so much of the decoration to the daily cooking pots. It's very hard to believe. That never happened in other culture in the world. And the reason why is they wanted to express something, of course. It's not just fooling around, playing around. It's not just a free artistic inspirational thing, it's not. But they had the reasons, I'm pretty sure, because these are not the particular design for just one village, one group of people. But if you find this kind of design, you will find it in certain area, vast area, and for the certain time, hundreds of years. So that means they had to have this design for some reasons, you see? And that's one of the mystery too. And okay, I'll show you the designing technology. And these are the tools used for decorating Jomon pottery. So many tools that they created. Mostly the cords, twined cords. And the way they twine the cords are so much in variety. Over 150 or 80 types of twining exists on the Jomon pottery decoration, and that's amazing. And of course, some cords that are combined with the sticks, like bamboo, rolled cord over bamboo stick, or bamboo sticks are also usable for spatula and other type of tools, decoration tools. And something like what? Well, of course, marine shell were used much in the earlier type of pottery. And this is a fish vertebra, sebone, were also used in these a carved stick with an incision, incised patterns on the surface. These were also used. This one also is another one. Well, I'll show you the real thing later. And you see a fish bone It's not a joke. They use this one also for a particular type of pottery design. And these are the models. And if you roll the cord, the point is rolling. You're not pressing the cords on the surface of the pottery. When you're making pottery and before you dry it hard, when the surface is still somehow soft, you roll the cord over the surface of the pottery, then you will mark this kind of design. And if this is a certain way of twining, and the twining is in other ways. This is we call them clockwise. If you look at from the top, the cord will go like this, clockwise, and this is anti-clockwise. Then the design will be changed. The direction is changed from this to this. And other way of twining, you know, various ways of twining. And you have knots. You tie the cord at the center, then you will give something like this S-type design. And you know, and two direction cords, two twining direction cords combined together would leave this kind of herringbone pattern. ヘリンボーンみたいなね、魚の骨みたいなデザインですね。And as you roll the cords over the stick, then you would see something different from these, you know. And sometimes it's sparsely rolled, then you see sparse type of decoration. And by various ways of rolling the cords over the stick, you will see something like net, something like wood or herringbone or whatever. And cords would be also pressed, not only rolling, but sometimes, not very many, but sometimes pressed, only in parts. A very small part of the cord will be pressed like this to show worm-like design. And the tip would be also used to show dots. And bamboo sticks. And なんていうのかね、組紐っていうんですけどね。What do you call that in English? 組紐 is like braids. Oh yeah, braids. Braided cord. It's not twined, but braided cord. よったんではなくて、組紐、編んだ紐ですね。Braided lines were also used to show the different decoration. And this is only a part of it. And something like these sticks, wooden sticks with the engravings would mark like oval pattern, wave pattern, and you know, the net pattern and something like these. You know, so much variety in a certain time, certain area. They liked these decoration. And shells could be used like this, edge of the shell, or you can scrape with the back of the shell. And the top small part of the shell will mark, leave this kind of mark. And well, they could do anything, you know, anything with any kind of ingredients, I mean, tools. And this is a fishbowl pressed. And you don't see it very often. It's rare, kind of rare things. And the fish vertebra also rolled over the surface. And this is a grass that growing by the road, you know, just a grass stem. And this stem bears a square cross section, you know, square type of, not the round type of stem. And somebody thought it was interesting and rolled over the pottery. This is the top of the grass, you know. And you really see this kind of decoration too. And a lot of ways of using spatula, bamboo spatula. Especially bamboo is like tube, like a straw. And when you split in half, then you would be able to draw a parallel lines by to edge. You see? And they use that a lot. And they use those 2 points as just like a compass, compass type of decoration. And round tip, half split tip, slanted tip. And you can drag them to make a incised line. You can just press it while you're dragging, and then you have a lot of series of notches. So many types of decoration they were adapting. Oh wait, I'll show you the real thing. Maybe it's imagine. I'll show you how to make cords. This is a tissue paper. Tissue paper has direction, fiber direction, do you know? This way you can't make, well, you can't make strip. If you try to tear this way, it goes vertical. But if you turn it up, then you will be able to make strips. Okay, this is the ingredients today. All right, by 2 fingers, roll it like this. And you have a cord. This is single twining. And this would not mark anything if you roll this over the clay. I'll make another one. I would call it string. It's not a cord either. It's just a string of fiber. They use the natural fiber of the grass, certain grass that gives you long, fine, strong cords. Okay, I twined it. This is anti-clockwise, both of them in the same direction. And I put them together and give another more twine together, all together. Twist it, then it will roll each other. I'm not making this intentionally. I'm just twisting 2 cords, 2 strings at the same time to the same direction. Then naturally it rolls together, twines together. This is how you make cords. See that? You can't do this. Don't touch them. Separate them and roll them independently. 2 of the strings should be twisted independently, separate. Then it will roll together. See? This is how you make cords. A little more. See, this is a cord. This is a single twine cord. And what happens if you use this to decorate the pottery? Here's clay. Let me roll it over it. Okay, here you go. You're pressing it with a finger and roll it. And what you find is, you see the lines, pearl lines, fine lines. Well, that's all. 3, oh, here you go. But you only see lines. It's not the jomu. It's not the code marking that I showed you in the picture. because this is just a simple one twist chord. You have to twist them again. The same chord will be twined again to the same direction of this chord. This time, like this. Can you see? As I twine two chords together, this would, see, it turns and roll together. This is the system. And you twine it tightly. Yeah, I'm doing this. I'm supporting the twine to make it really hard, very strong twine. Okay, this is the second one. This is the second twine chord, the first twine chord. I'll do the same thing. Okay. Roll it over the surface, and what you see is here. You can see the grain in the lines, pearl lines. You can see grains. This is the second twine. And you can keep doing it. You know, you can make the third one twine together, the second one, and you would find a different pattern of the chord marking. This is the basic chord marking of the German pottery. You always see the grain, single strands of grain. A whole bunch of stuff today. This is, I think, 3 or 4 twine. It becomes thick. And if I roll it, see, more complicated design. Grains in the grain. You know, you can compare with the others. You see, it's more complicated ones. And they really like to do this, you know, and compare and invent the new way of twining. Like I kept twining the same direction strings together. What happens if you twine together the different direction, right direction and left direction, clockwise and anti-clockwise, would give you something like this is a chord. Can you see? It's not very clear. I should roll it and show you on the plate. Here you go. You see, grained line and 2 strands, grained line, 2 strands. The 2 strands released chords. You know, if you twine the different direction chords together, then one chord would be twined harder, and another one would be released back to the original 2 chords. You know, loosened. See, this is a different pattern, right? And so on. So many chords, and something like this. Chords over a bamboo stick would drop that. Show something like this, you know, loose lines of the chords. It's totally different from rolling the cords itself over the surface. We call them より糸もですね。なんて言うんだろうな。より糸も。I forgot the term in English, but there are terms, all of the technology of the pottery decorations are translated in English. Show you later. And sticks. Sticks. 鉛筆だね、これね。Pencil, using pencil. So oval engraving and wave type zigzag engraving, which show all right. There you go. You see? Okay, these rouletting, we call them rouletting in English. 押し型もんって言います。日本語では押し型もん。How about the seashell? The coarse line type. You would scrape them. This kind of lines, pearl lines. And you can use the edge. You see? Zigzag, tiny zigzag lines. And you can use the top of the shell. And see something like can you see the line fan-like radiating lines on top? See? And of course, spatulas, half split bamboo, you know, half of the bamboo. And drag a simple line. The other way around, you draw pearl lines like that. You see? And you can use the end of the stick. We call them fingernail marks, but actually it's made of half split bamboo. You can make it slanted, so it will give different effect. See? And what? Compass. I don't know if I can do that. Not this way, maybe this way. Round, round, see it? Round, round, something like that. See? Yeah, they invented so much types of decoration by using this kind of tools, ingredients. Spatula, split, cut bamboo, give different type of notched patterns, so and so forth. And of course, round pattern. They did whatever they could think of, So the variety is like hundreds of type of decoration you could combine together in one pottery. Well, not all of them were appear in one pottery, of course, but they are the kind of person I met in people, and that clearly shows you that clearly show you that they had time, they had spare time. You know, you have to have time to invent something like this, and so, well, as we have already seen in the subsistence technology and method strategies, they were aiming at more efficiency, you know, but for hunting and gathering food and processing, they were raised so much efficiency, and they uh, created more spare time, and they didn't waste the time. They did this kind of things using up those time. So there are so how do I say this? They're so forward going, very positive people. You know, they just not they were not the people kind of people who just sit still and enjoying the natural resources, the gifts of the nature, and spend easy life. No, they're not that kind of people. They were so, I should say, aggressive, maybe, very positive, very front going, trying to exploit as much as possible. Because one of the reasons is because I think I mentioned before, but they were hunter and gatherers. They depended their lives on nature only. You know, they could do some intentional works like growing horticulture and maybe kept baby boars for a certain time or something like that. But they couldn't control over, they couldn't totally control over the nature. And so they have to sometimes strive, they have to bear from the less crops, bad climate, and you wouldn't get much food that you expected. And in order to avoid that, you know, they have to expand their choice. They have to expand their variety of food resources. So when you cannot catch certain things like this year, you don't get much acorns, but you get more fish that year. So you shift your diet. You know, you can shift your diet if you have this choice selection. So that was their system and that was their attitude. They went so aggressively exploit the environmental resources because of the survival. That was their intelligence, you see. Okay. Let's see. Well, not only pottery designs, but they, well, I'll explain it later, but they did so many other things, spending so much hours and efforts, labors, and thanks to the development of their environment and their methods. All right, let's look at potteries. All right, let's follow the time. This is the one of the earliest pottery in Japan, and that means one of the earliest pottery ever found in the world. And this was found in Kyushu, South Island, northern part of Kyushu. And we call them bean applique. 登竜門と言いますね。豆の粒と書いて、登竜門。Bean applique type of pottery. Very simple form. Flat top, flat rim, and a little swell body and round bottom. And you have tiny applied piece of clay like beans, vertically lined, you know, these. That's all about the decoration, very simple. And we don't know anything about this decoration. I don't know what it means, but you know, but there are in series and in system, vertically lined, horizontally lined. So they have this intentional idea about decorating the pottery this way. And also we realize that bottom part is red and top part is black, darker. So it's obviously a cooking pot that's been used over the fire. This is also, this belongs to the incipient period, the very early period, a little later than the previous one, but this is one of the popular design of the pottery in the early period. And we can find it almost all over Japan. So it was widespread. We call them linear relief. And it's a little open, wide mouth, flat rim. And you have notches, series of notch on the edge, rim edge. And you have a fine line of the fine strip of clay attached horizontally. And there's one straight strip, one wavy type strip, one wave type, straight wave, wave, straight wave, two sets of these horizontal strips, linear relief type of pottery. It's a simple decoration too, but it's not too simple. You have to spend a lot of time making these just to apply this wavy lines too. And round bottom and red bottom and darker top. These are cooking pots. And into the next period, earliest period, the previous one is incipient period. Sosoki ですね。Sosoki と言います。And this is the Soki, earliest period ですね。And base is still round or a little pointed and flat top. Still bears a simple form. And you see some cone marking in incipient period already. Not that type that we've seen, but there are some cone markings, but the obvious cone marking appears from this period. And these are not the rolled code marking that I showed you. This is the Yori Itomon. This is made by cords rolled over the stick. And this is totally different from what we saw. This is Yori Itomon type. And this is another type, a little bit northern. No, this is a Western type, and rouletted, carved stick, engraved stick type, the wavy decoration with a stick, wooden stick, not the cords. And pointed bottom, and lighter color, darker color, simple rim, shell scraped type. Horizontal shell scrape, slanted notches. And these are very simple too. There's a pointed bottom. It's pretty pointed. And this one's pointed too. Red bottom, darker top. And a little wavy rim appears from towards the end of this earliest period. And very shallow patterns that you can see. And oh, this is different. The reason why the bottom are pointed or either round at the beginning is because they were a cooking pot. Okay, the ground or floor where you build fire, and flat bottom, round bottom. There's a difference. I mean, this is not stable. You can't put this, the round bottom or pointed bottom pottery on the floor directly. So you need to have something, maybe stones. Three stones would do it. Three stones and just stick them in between. You'll be stabilized, this type of pottery. And these are cooking pots. Fire. You see? What's the difference? This pot has to be heated with fire, right? Because it's cooking pot, you have to heat it. And if the bottom of the pot is touching the floor, you can't heat the bottom, right? Because fire is on the floor. So you're not heating it from bottom. You're heating this pot from the side. You see? But if you adopt this kind of round bottom, pointed bottom, then you're heating it with the bottom. So the heat efficiency is very superb this way. See? So that's probably why. They don't care about placing the pot on the floor. You know, this is a cooking pot. You have to worry about the efficiency of the heat. So this is better, a lot better than this one. Probably that's why. Even after the Jomon pottery got the flat bottom in later periods, the bottom of the Jomon pottery is very small. I think I showed you. Look, see, this bottom is so small. It's not stable at all. Actually, when you place it, it's scary. It's moving. It's not flat either. You see? The bottom's small and it's not flat. So this bottom is not designed for placing or fixing the pot on the floor. You know, you still have to have something to support the pot when you use it, but you still need the efficiency, heat efficiency, you know, heat up from the bottom. So you have more bottom than base. That's Jomon pot. So obviously they are cooking pots designed for use on fire. Okay. All right. Another picture. Right. This is very peculiar. This is called jaw, narrow neck. You have a neck. And this form is called jaw. And you don't see jar in Jomon period very much. A few, very few, countable. Always a deep bowl, open bowl for cooking purposes, mostly. But in this earliest stage, there are jars. Jars existed only in south end of Kyushu, Kagoshima prefecture area. It's really, really peculiar. All the archaeologists were surprised to see this because normally we believe that jar type of pottery appears in Yayoi period, right after Jomon period. There are so many jars in Yayoi period, but that's their appearance. But only in Kyushu, only in Kagoshima area, this type of jar exists. And we don't know what they are. It's really peculiar. And not only jazz, but in those same culture of Kagoshima in the earliest German stage, they got so much other stuffs that other area would not have in the earlier stage, but in later stage. So this area obviously was advanced in the entire German culture, entire Japan, and culturally advanced. But they were not lucky. Right in this earliest period, there was a big eruption of a volcano, and Kikai volcano. That's right now. It's sunken under the water, under the ocean. It's south from the Kagoshima. It's very close to Kagoshima. It was a huge eruption that hit this area directly, and you still can see a red layer covering up all this cultural layer, and that means everything was down. Everything disappeared under the ash and volcanic ash and lava and everything. You know, the culture went extinct. Too bad, huh? Anyway, so this is a rare example. But normally, those open type jar is the typical pottery of Jomon time. And into early period, instead of earliest period, early Jomon period, Zenki, Jomon Zenki, the decoration becomes more complicated, as you see here. And it's covering the entire surface, even to the bottom. And you still see applique of clay beans like things. Well, it's not, it has, I don't think it has any relation to the incipient, the earliest one, but they still, maybe later, thousands years after other guys invented the same type of decoration. But you see, these chord markings are so elaborate. And within this one pottery, probably 4 or 5 types of twining cord, different type of cords were used. And those pearl lines drawn by with half split bamboos are also popular. And firstly, they invented this flat bottom, but very small. And you see red pot oxidized by fire and soot over the top part. And you see the black part at the bottom. And this means the bottom, very bottom, was not heated by the fire. As I just explained, you know, it was touching the ground. So it was not heated here. So that's why it has a soot over it. And some peculiar things always appear in this early period, only in early period, this U4 type pottery appears. It's so flat. And we don't know the function of this. These are not a cooking pot. Doesn't show any indication of being fired in use. And has a perforation, a row of perforation near the rim. And the base is not flat either. It's kind of round base, very small round base. We don't know what that is. And decorated with a half split bamboo, those pearl lines, as you can see, rim perforated type. It's another mystery. So many mysteries in German culture. And this is another type. The same pipe, same type, a rim perforated type, you know, perforation here, but it's not as flat as the U4 type. It belongs to the same type with a round bottom, but it's lacquered, covered with lacquer. Excuse me. The red lacquer painted all over. Then over it, the black lacquer were used for drawing designs like spiral and those lines, you know. And lacquer would not survive in the earth. This one survived because it was waterlogged site right by the river. And so that means probably many of the pottery were also painted with lacquer, not the cooking pot. There's no sense painting cooking pot because it'll be exposed on fire and lacquer will be gone. Some specific type of pottery like this would bear lacquer sometimes. We don't know what that is. One possibility is fermentation functions, fermenting or brewing function. Maybe they were making liquor, alcohol, liquid in this container, so that they will put some fruits, sweet type of fruits like wild grape or those kiwi and other type of fruits, and smashed, mixed with water and put in, and leave it with a lid or something, close it up. Then the gas would come out from these holes. That's one theory, but we don't know. Not very many of these were found. It's only one or two from sites in northern part, Yamagata Prefecture. Okay, back to the cooking pot. This is a cooking pot too. You know, can you believe that? This is sick thing. You know, the entire surface is filled with minute patterns, and these patterns were also made with a half split bamboo. You know, but as you drag the half split bamboo, you press it, and make those greens. You know, how many hours you have to spend just to make one of these? And this entire shape is beautiful too. They didn't have the turntable. ろくろね、ろくろないです。They didn't have the turntable technology at the time until Kofun period, pretty much later. So this is totally handmade. And still, they're not thick either. They're very thin, very beautifully made. It's really, really difficult to make one of these. And we don't know why they wanted to cover the entire surface with a decoration. They must have had certain reason, very strong reason for it. And we call them in art definition, we call them horror vacui. Horror vacui. Horror, you know the horror. Vacui is vacant. So you're afraid of vacant empty space. That's horror vacui. You have to fill it up. It's like a spiritual, mental symptom. You know, you have to just fill them up. The entire thing. That's horror vacui. But it's like that. Sorry. Let's make a mistake. Yeah. And you see the wavy rim from this early period. This is another early period pottery, small bottom. And pearl lines. These are not these flip bamboo lines. These are many lines all together, drawn together. So it's like a comb. 串書きですね。串のような comb-like tool, comb pattern. And overlapping, you know, and applique, small applique, ring and tiny bottom. And something like earlobe type of decoration sticking out. You see, these decoration, German type decoration, German pottery decoration are so abstract. They're not representing anything like human, animal, trees, sun and moon, and anything that you can see in the actual world. They, they are so abstract. So they must be representing their spiritual world, their vision of the world or something, but in a very specific, very strange way. So it's very, very hard to explain and decipher about those decoration patterns. Katsaka and Moroiso. Those names are from the site or place name that this type of pottery was firstly found. So Moroiso is a place name in Kanagawa Prefecture. That's where they found this type of pottery for the first time. In Katsaka, also in Kanagawa Prefecture. And into the middle Jomon. This is a middle Jomon pottery. Now you see real three-dimensional sticking out type of decorations, but they're all abstract. You can't tell what is what, which is which. You know, something looks like eyes, but that's all. Something looks like snakes, that's all. They all look like something, but you can't really tell. But this is red bottom, dark top pottery. So obviously this was a cooking pot, daily use cooking pot. It's to bear this kind of decoration for the daily pot. From this time on, around middle Jomon, this different shape of the pottery appears. It's a bowl, shallow bowl we call asabachi, shallow bowl form. And in many cases, it gets paints, like lacquer painted ones. We see them often. And you see this design, red lacquer over black background lacquer. And it's not heated on fire, you know, it's not a red bottom, black top. It's obviously a different type of pottery. And we suppose that these shallow bowls were for serving purposes. Like when you cook something like stew or soup in a deep bowl, and you would put them into this shallow bowl, and your family member will be around and eat from this bowl. That's one thing, one function we can suppose. And we're not always finding this type of pottery, but pretty much found in Middle Jomon period. So probably that's one of the practice to eat the meal all together with the family around this pottery. And it becomes more crazy. This is a Shinshu type, the middle Japan, middle area, Nagano prefecture, Nagano and Yamanashi prefecture, mountain areas. And, something strange sticking out. This is simple, cylindrical, simple form of pottery, but something strange sticking out. Looks like a football player, protector. But it doesn't have a head, it doesn't have a face. It's a strange round motifs on top. And it's not the arm either. It's kind of strange tentacles type of thing sticking out. So we don't really know. We can't decipher it. Some people would say, oh, this is God, the Jomon people. Who knows? And this design could be looked at this way. This is a very wonderful invention of taking photograph of pottery design. And this guy used to take photo of the train. You know, train is long, so you can't shoot it at once with just one camera. You know, so what he invented is to move the camera along with the train, and run the film as you move the camera. So you will have a long strip of film with one train picture. You know what I mean? And he arranged it so that now his camera is not moving straight forward, but he made it to rotate around the object like pottery. You place the pottery at the center and you rotate the camera around it. As you move the camera, the film inside the camera moves, runs at the same time, simultaneously. So you get this picture. You know, the film goes around the pottery all around, and this is the same area. So this is one complete surface design. And so you can see the whole design at once, you know. It's very interesting. It looks like some morphological, you know, human or animal or something like that. It looks like arms, looks like body, legs, but they're not really. And one particular characteristics of German pottery is they hated symmetry. 対称ですね。対称を嫌ったんですね。They hated it. It looks symmetry, right? Right and left, it's the same, but they're not. Look at this end. See, it's a vacant space. Look at this one, round decoration. So it's different. It's not symmetry. This one's not symmetry. Look at these patterns right here and right here. It looks symmetry, but this oval one's not in this cross type decoration. It's what? Circular patterns. And oval pattern is in this triangular space. But this triangular space bears a circle here, oval in the cross type. You see, they are doing it intentionally. They are doing it intentionally. They don't like the symmetry pattern. We don't really know about this either. Probably there's not really a symmetrical design or patterns in the natural world. You know, it's always different, right and left. So probably that's why they didn't like the intentional, perfect symmetry design. Or I don't know. But we always see this intentional change between right and left, like these. This is one characteristics of German pottery too. And in the Middle German, this one becomes popular. Remember, it was U4-like pottery in the early German with a perforation around the rim and flat rim. And now it's a deep bowl type, but still have a perforation and the rim sticking out right below the perforation holes. And they're always in a deep bowl, not always, but mostly deep bowl type. And they're not the cooking pot. You can see sometimes it's painted and you don't see the red bottom and dark top. So this type of pottery is in question about its function. And as I mentioned before, it could be used for brewing alcohol using fruits. But because one of these found in Nagano Prefecture included some charred seeds of the wild grape inside. So that's one of the reasons why some people believe that this was a brewing vessel. And other people would say this was a drum, you know, flat top. The animal skin was placed on the top and fixed with the pegs down into these holes. You know, taiko desu ne. So instruments, musical instruments, they would say. And we don't know the answer yet. And I personally believe that these were brewing vessel because of those evidences, not just because I like to drink, but and sometimes those lacquer paints over it goes into those holes too as you paint the surface, and those paints in the hole still remain today, and that means they did not stick anything into the hole. You know, if you stick wood plug or something just to fix the skin over it, then those paints will be removed, but they're still in there. So these were not used for drums, I believe. But some other people would not believe that. So there are two theories. And this one's separate. This one's a pedestal. We don't find it very many, but in the Middle German period, you will find some of this. These are exhibited in the USM Museum upstairs too. You may go back and see it. And always there are two holes, or two round holes or oval holes, two holes this side and other sides too. Always pair, four holes on both sides. And they used to say, they used to call it pedestal for the pottery, but now they believe there is a new theory that it was sort of a turntable. It was used when they made the pottery. They made pottery on this pedestal so that you can turn this pedestal around by sticking your fingers, two fingers, both hands, and you can turn them around. So it's like a turntable, but it doesn't turn it by itself, but you intentionally can turn it while you're making the pottery. Pottery is a round thing, so you have to have something that turns when you make the pottery. When you make decoration of the pottery, you have to always change the different face. Oops, sorry. Oh. Okay, it's right time to have a break. It's almost to 6, so let's start the next session from 6 o'clock. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, all right. Okay, so I'll keep showing a variety of German pottery. It's a Middle German. This is also Middle German. This is one of the peak Umataka type. Umataka is a place name of the Niigata Prefecture, Japan seaside, a little bit north. And this pottery is limited to certain area near Niigata area. It's not all over Japan. Well, other types too. None of them are made all over Japan. They are limited to certain area. Sometimes it's vast, sometimes it's narrow, but this is kind of narrow area type. And you can't really see the design. I have the model, so I can show you. Let's see. Just a minute. This is not the exact copy. This is a smaller version, smaller scale version. And one of the ICU student used to make. And basically it's a simple pot, wider top and smaller bottom. It's actually it's smaller than that. But have four handles. We call them handles, but they're not handles, but we call handles. The four things sticking out on the rim, you know, one of those. This is really three-dimensional. You can see a hole through. And from the front, we don't know what this is. It's very hard to tell. It looks like an animal. Legs, two legs, body and head, tail sticking up like that, you know. But it's not really that type of thing. But four of them sticking up in those pointed rim, these pointed stuff sticking up from the rim. So some people will call them fire flame pottery. Kaendoki って言いますよね. So this is a design, simple pot, but over decorated. It's so hard to use. You don't want to stick your hand in. It's kind of painful. But it was popular among those people in that area. See, this is a head, some on sticking up, the pointed things on the head, body, tail, two legs, and you know, engraving technology. It's right here. These are applied to the pot, but these were engraved patterns of the body. Okay. Okay. Kamiyama type, Tenjin-yama type. It's Hokuriku areas, near Ishikawa and Kanazawa, Fukui, and those areas. This is one of the peak too. This is really horror vacui type, you know, entire surface is covered with decoration that's sticking out, you know, three-dimensional decoration and one big handle that does not represent anything, you know, look like some kind of animal head, maybe, may not be, we don't know. It's really, really mentally ill, I would say. And into the latter half of the Middle Jomon period, it becomes simpler, as I mentioned. And this is one of the sori type, was popular in mountain area, Nagano and Yamanashi, Shinshu area. And the three-dimensional decorations are less compared to the previous ones, but the entire decoration is so elaborate. You know, it's wonderful. And sori type, this type is represented by those pearl lines, comb patterns, kushigaki, comb pattern. And we see a lot of fragments from our site at ICU that includes this comb pattern. So obviously they had a connection between the mountain area and this area. And information exchange as well as the trade goods going back and forth. But those decoration or ideas were also exchanged among those areas. Well, I'll talk about that later. And this is another sori type, you know, the pearl lines, but different. You know, it's more three-dimensional. And those handles sticking up, looks like a bird head, you know, eyes and beak. Four of them, you know, all over. Basically, the simple pot, you know, it's not really elaborate shape. And bottom red, top black, the daily cooking pot it was. Another story type with the parallel lines, but oh, this is another peak. This pottery became one design for postal stamp 切手のねデザインに昔なりましたね。And we used to call them water flow design. Water flow. It's like water, flowing around, swirling. But this is a very simple cylindrical pot. And into this area around Tokyo, including ICU, the same latter half of the middle Jomon, this type was very popular. And this is what we find a lot from the campus site, Kasuri E-type. It's very simple, very, very beautiful design. I like this, but no three-dimensional design at all. A little bit engraving decoration here and lines, Jomon, code marking, that's all. You see, it's more practical, I should say. Red bottom, darker top. And into late Jomon, the period changes into late Jomon. It's simple all the way through. Very simple, but the decoration is very minute and very elaborate. This is really beautiful design and beautifully made. The entire shape is very beautiful. But you see this clay band, clay cord. It's not straight. It's kind of distorted. It's really interesting. You see the both characteristics, not very fine, but very fine, living together on one pottery. It's really, really interesting to think about the mentality of this Jomon period. They care about certain things so much, but they don't care about other things, that kind of thing. And they have a very minute decoration on tip of the wavy rim too. And from this late period on, you will find peculiar ones, very different ones. And also, there's one big tendency that they would start making two groups of pottery. One is finely made, just like this, very finely made. And the other group is coarsely made without decoration. It's just practical for practical use. And they would separate these two groups clearly from this period. Until Middle Jomon period, the elaborate pottery, everything was used practically every day for cooking purpose, but not from this type period. And these finely made groups would have been used for ceremonial or ritual, or whatever, so specific occasions. And the daily use pottery is more simple. And these are elaborate ones, And we don't know the function of these. This is a low vessel with a pedestal and big opening, 3 round opening. And somebody would call it lamp. You would put some fat, animal or plant oil or fat or whatever, and use it as a lantern, a lighting at night. You put a string through these holes and suspend it in the dwelling or something. We don't know. And this is more peculiar one. It's so irregularly shaped. It looks like a fish, all the fins sticking out. But it got so many holes. It's not the vessel to hold anything. Anything would leak through these holes, so many holes. So it's not the container. It's something else that we don't know. And from this late Jomon, there are another advance of technology in pottery making, which is, one is Surikeshi Jomon, erased Jomon. you cover the entire surface with a minute grain of code marking like this. You cover the entire thing, and you draw the lines, draw the design, and erase the code marking of certain area like this in here, in here, in here, so that the code marked area outstands. You know, it becomes a background by erasing the code mark, rubbing the code mark and erase it. And this part erased, this part erased, something like that. So to outstand the certain motifs and patterns, you hire this erasing code mark, surikeshi jomo technology. And also the whole thing looks black. And they're using the same type of clay as the other red, brown type of pottery, but the finishing is black. They're not painting anything. The way they baked this pottery is very specific. You bake it normally in the bonfire. I mean, all the German pottery was baked on the ground in the fire, just a regular fire. They didn't have any kiln or any compartment to make bake one of those pottery. It's open fire. And if you just bake them in fire, then it'll turn all red because the iron in the clay will be oxidized and show reddish or brownish color. But at the final moment, right before it's completely baked, you cover the fire, everything up with green leaves or something, so that it prevents the oxygen while it's burning. It prevents the enough oxygen so that the soot from the fire would stick and would not be disintegrated. It would not be disappeared by the heat. So the soot remains, stays on the surface. すすがね、表面についたままですね。So the finishing, the final pottery will look like this, in the black, covered with soot. So it's a special type of finishing. It looks like iron pot, you know. And also this shape, the spouted, 注ぎ口がついたね, spouted pottery, and with a handle. It looks just like the teapot that we use today. 急須みたいでしょ。やかんでもいいよな。And this shape appeared from this time period. And obviously, this is a small pot, by the way. This is larger. This picture looks larger than the real thing. But it's only 10 centimeter diameter. And these types are always small, mostly. And obviously, these are designed for pouring liquids from the container. And well, it shouldn't be water, of course. But what we estimate is the alcohol, liquor, osake ne. And so you don't find these spouted pots in number. It's quite rare. So we're pretty sure that these were one of the ceremonial use pottery. And the alcohol was used for ritual services and ceremonial purposes, probably. They were not drinking every day, like I do. Okay, and into the latter part of the late Jomon, you see this erasing technique. See, the entire surface was covered with a code marking, and then draw the pattern with a stick, then erase the certain area, erase the code marking of the certain areas to outstand the major pattern. See? And also, I forgot to mention in this one, but the surface is shiny, right? glowing. It's because they did hire another technology called polishing. They polished the surface of the pot right before it was completely dry. It's not soft, but not perfectly dry. Then you will polish the surface with something smooth, like a stone, smooth stone. Then you will get this glow. This is another technology, polishing. And these were obviously polished, you know, those erased areas polished, and you see the glow. And this is a jar that did not exist in the earlier period, except for the earliest one in Kagoshima. But now they're starting to make some of this. Well, not very many though. And the function of the jar is not cooking, of course. And these are designed for storing things or liquid or whatever. So they made the opening, the mouth small, so that dust and other things would not go in. You can just close it up and you can store it for a certain time. It could be food or liquid or whatever. So it's a container, I mean, preservation container, storage vessel. And Jomon people didn't use that for many years until this. But not very many appeared even in this period. And you see those lacquered, painted small pottery, those small vessels and spouted vessel, 中香土器って言いますね。注ぎ口と書いて中香土器と呼びます。And you see, the lacquer would give more effect to the pottery that is waterproof. You know, just like the bowls, wooden bowls we use today for miso shiru and soup. It's a coating, waterproof coating also. It's not just a design or coloring, but the coating effect is very good with a lacquer paint. So obviously these were used for liquid use, probably of the ceremonial chances. And this one also, this is not painted. You see, just as I explained right now, this was made with the covering device. So that soot would all stick on the surface after you polish it so well. You know, it looks like an iron. It looks like a metal, but it's a pottery made of clay. He or she polished the entire surface so well that it's glowing like this, and covered with a soot in the final stage of firing, baking, and it looks like this. This is also a spouted pot. In many occasions, those spouted pots, the spouts accompany two balls right here. So obviously it's symbolized female, I mean, male organ. You know, it's like a penis. And the liquor or other specific liquid comes out of it. So it's a symbolic stuff too. So you can probably imagine about the content of the ceremony too. And final phase, in the latest Jomon period, Banki ですね, Jomon Banki. Latest period, you see the jar like this. And it's still different from the jar designs we find in next Yayoi period. It's particular to Jomon period, very beautifully made, polished well, it's glowing. And those simple incised patterns are not simple. It's really complicated design. It's like a maze. It's very interesting. Okay. So, as you've seen right now, there are so much variation, so many types of forms and designs and decorations of the Jomon pottery. Depends on the period, time period. and depends on the area too. Okay, a little more. Let me talk about the design. And this is a good example. I've shown you before. This is a Umataka type fire flame pottery, so-called. And this looks really wild, and this looks like artistic expression and things like that, but it's not. The design has norm. The design has a regulation, like a law. They have to follow all the design in detail too, in this type of the pottery. These three potteries of the same Umataka type, as you can see, but they were found from different sites around Niigata area, the same area, but different sites. So obviously belong to different community. That means these were made by different person, right? And you see this handle sticking out, the same type of a handle, almost the same design. And you have this, if this was an animal, tail sticking up, then these are legs. In between legs, you have an opening of the heart shape. You have the opening of the heart shape, same shape right there. You see? Square, round, and triangle. Square, round, long triangle. Not this one, but you see. And can't really see. Just a minute. Can't really see it. Okay, all right. And those flames, flame-like projection, and always 3 or 4 projection. And you have ring-like, 2 ring-like projection right here and right here and right here, 4 of them right below the handle. You see the same thing here. And you have this oval pattern, right? Circle, oval, 2 ovals and a circle in between. And the circle is filled with lines, 2 oval, 1 circle, 2 oval, 1 circle with lines, 2 oval, 1 circle with lines. And there's horizontal S-like pattern for all of them on the body. You see here and here. The direction is different, but always. You have to have those. And this is the rule. When you make this kind of pottery, you have to follow the rule. You have to make it the same. You see? These are made by different person, but they all knew about the rule. So obviously, it's not an artistic design. It's not, well, maybe firstly, when they invented this design, it was under the influence of the artistic ability or something. But once this design was established, you can't make it different. You can't arrange it. Maybe a little bit, like this in here, but still, you see a common design here and here, and this one and this tail area, you see? So few arrangements, but the major part is already decided, and you have to make it following the rule. And that's what it is about Jomon pottery. Any other kind of pottery are the same. And what does that mean? We don't really know. We can't really give the answer to it, but it's pretty obvious that they had this rule in certain community, not only one village, but certain area of the communities and certain time period, they kept this rule. And that probably means that this is the symbol, the whole design is a symbol of the group, not only one community, but all the certain area group. And so it's a representation of their mindset, representation of their spiritual world or vision of the world, whatever you say. They shared this design among those groups. And the design would represent these groups. So anybody else from other part of the country, when they see this design, you would immediately know that this belongs to that certain area. Oh, those guys. So it's like a nameplate. German pottery design is like a nameplate of the certain area of the group. So that's why they kept the same design for in certain area for a certain time period. And that always happened in German time. We don't know about the detail. We can't really explain about it, but from these evidences, we can estimate that, you know, their spiritual world is a part of their spiritual beliefs or rules, strict rules expressed on the pottery. And now you know why they have to make this over the normal daily use cooking pot, because that's the rule you have to follow. All right. Okay. I'll keep explaining about the designs, decoration, rules, but I should stop it now. Maybe you are pretty tired looking through all the different pottery. And the ones I've shown you in this lecture is only a part. There are so many others. You go crazy if you go through everything. It's wonderful. You never see it in other part of the world, other pottery culture. No, it's so outstanding. So anyway, I should be wrap it up by now. So